Okay, thank you very much for the session and the opportunity. So, for me, one of the things I believe we should teach now, especially for our people in Africa and the young generation, is values, right? If you trace back to history, in the olden days, a man is recognized for his handwork and what value he brings to the society, and that translated to chieftaincy titles, recognition by the community, and that those kind of things. So I believe we should use this as an example where values really mattered, because nowadays people are after what they get, even though we want to emancipate ourselves from economic difficulties, but we should also remember that values matter. And as human beings, we should not live like a life of crime, or there is no dignity in crime. So we should teach our people, especially our young ones, those values that were recognized in the past, you know. And secondly, there is something they call in Igbo, in here in Africa, the concept of Onyahala Nwanne. That means don't leave your brother behind. And that went a long way also to influence our father's generation, who always went back to the village to bring two or three boys who they bring to the cities, train them, empower them, and eventually even settle them, as we call, give them money that they would use to start up business, even in the line of business that they are trading. And these people can end up becoming competition, but it didn't really matter. But the concept was don't leave your brother behind. So I believe that these two lessons are something that we should inculcate in the teachings that we give um, people today. Our values and the concept of never leave your brother behind. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That is well said. Ndi, you have the floor.
Okay. Hello, everyone.
Hello.
So glad to hear the history of medicine in Africa and to understand that um, the first doctors, or say the father of medicine, came from Africa. It's something really, um, I say, can help to raise self-esteem in our young Africans of nowadays, because a lot of times we are taught to believe that everything came from West, everything came from Europe, everything came from America, and it kind of brings down our self-esteem. It makes us feel inferior, and that is part of the reason why. I mean, if we look around the world, Africans are looked upon as being inferior. Africans are looked upon, and even many Africans look at themselves as being inferior. That said, I think learning about the history of Africa and the achievements of Africa is also not about, you know, basking in past glory, but trying to look at the lessons, getting lessons from that period that we can bring back into society today. The last speaker talked about values. We try to learn about the values of the past that made the ancient Africans to be successful, to achieve, and compare with our society today. What is lacking? What don't we have? What are some of the values that have been abandoned and which eventually are bringing down Africans? The other thing I want to say is that looking at ancient, like talking about medicine in the past, it can also help us to understand that within our local communities, we have a lot of assets. We have assets, we have natural resources, we have human resources that can be used. And I think some of the things we can learn is how to uh, encourage community-based development using resources in our local communities. Talk about medicine. We have like plants. Even today, we have African traditional medicine that many people have been practicing for a long time. I think that this is some things that Africans can invest more on to find those local resources. If it's in health, what are those local plants that have medicinal potential that we can invest in? We can train more people to understand, say, their chemistry, their biology, and all of those things, so that we don't continue to import medicine from the West, thinking that only Western medicine is the best for us. Whereas, I mean, research has shown that a lot of Western medicine has many side effects that are harmful to the body later on. So I think what you're saying is that Africa has a lot of potential. Africa is very rich, but we have to develop those potentials that we have so that Africans can become more self-sufficient. Thank you.
Well said. Just to tie what you just said to what the former speaker mentioned earlier about teaching values, we can always connect important biographies from history to these values. And I'm very pleased to hear that you sort of had an aha moment today by hearing for the first time that the father of medicine was African. It's very uplifting, not just for Africans, but for the world. So there is an inscription from ancient Egypt. It was an inscription that first defined who a philosopher is. And some scholars actually think that that definition was pointing to Imhotep. But nonetheless, it is the first definition of a philosopher. And here is how we can tie again biography to values. And I'm going to read this definition of a philosopher, and perhaps you could pull out some values as I read it. He is the one whose heart is informed about these things which would be otherwise ignored. The one who is clear-sighted when he is deep into a problem. The one who is moderate in his actions, who penetrates ancient writings, whose advice is sought to unravel complications, who is really wise, who instructed his own heart, who stays awake at night as he looks for the right paths, who surpasses what he accomplished yesterday, who is wiser than a sage, who brought himself to wisdom, who asks for advice and sees to it that he asks advice. That is the definition of a philosopher from ancient Egypt well over 2,000 years ago. It was called the inscription of Antef. That's where it came from. So we can find ways to connect biographies or writings from our history to values. We can pull out some values from there, values such as hard work, values such as listening, and so on and so forth. So let's keep that in mind as well. Very great. Anybody else, please? Anybody else? Yes.
Can you?
Yes, I can.
Wonderful. This is Jonathan Allen. I live in Boston, Massachusetts, in the United States. I am so grateful to be invited here this morning, and your review of a philosopher of what I believe to be the heart of social transformation, to be the heart of leadership, that leaders who are concerned with social transformation must take care of themselves by developing self-awareness, social awareness, and spiritual awareness. That the three of them prepares you fully to think through the complexities and the intricacies of the human existence and the human experience. That we are journeying life through so many different paths, but there is commonality, there is common ground that we should tap into to unify us so that we can think about the solutions to the problems that we face. And I think that's exactly what you all embody in this university, in this collective here, in your coming together today. And that is what we must continue to push powerful. And I'm on here because I'm an African American, and I know that my roots are far more than what I even understand and know. And that we have to take intentional effort to connect. We have to be intentional about coming together. We have to be intentional about uniting, because we are cut from the same cloth. And thank you so much for inviting me today. And I pray that nothing but all that is good will find each of you and overtake you.
Thank you so much, brother, for that uplifting admonition and for those kind words. That is exactly what we need today. Thank you so much, brother. Yes, anybody else? Yes, the floor is open. What should we teach in school? We want to keep it positive, we want to keep it empowering, because that's what we need to be doing now. We know what the issues are. How do we move forward?
Hello, Professor.
Yes,
Can you hear me?
You have the floor, sir. Go ahead.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Loud and clear.
Yeah, this is Chika Wankwo, speaking in from South Korea. My contribution is, for me, one of the things we need to teach, which I have spoken earlier when we started this meeting, is still on mindset change, reformation of the mindset. Because for me, it is key, it is very much important, because no matter the cause, no matter the model, we should be able to rechannel the mind, reorientation of the mind, because a lot of Blacks, a lot of Africans have just given up. We don't believe it can work in Africa. So everybody's mind, we know we all want to go out, even those that are still down home. For me, there's no problem. Even when you go, because here in Korea, I've learned that, like the South Koreans, even when they travel abroad, they still have the desire to come back to develop their, country. They like their local dishes. They like their everything, that is made in Korea. So we should be able to impute that mindset change so that our people will be able to love ourselves, we love our skin, we love our hair the way it is, we love the things we find in our community. It will help us, to start from, not that we cannot learn from the Western world, we can still get some things from them, merge it with what we have, so that we can start growing from there. So that nobody will come to tell us that Mungo Park discovered River Niger, when we know that our forefathers were fishing in River Niger, they were drinking from there. But the history changed, because throughout my school days, I was told that it was Mungo Park. But I've gone in recent time to speak with people, discover that our forefathers were already doing activities there. So mindset change is very, very important. It's very, very key. We love ourselves, we love our things, then we'll work on it to get better. Thank you.
That is powerful. Thank you so much. And we need more people like you, brother, to be instructors, because we want this impartation to happen in the lives of our students. We want them to learn this mindset shift, this change in the way we think about ourselves in the classroom. So thank you for that contribution. Anybody else? Yes.
Okay, good afternoon, everybody.
Good afternoon, ma'am.
And good afternoon, Professor Siri.
Good afternoon.
I feel so bad that I missed the last two meetings. I was unavoidably absent, and but I had to tag along by watching the videos after that. Then I also joined in late today, and I'm really sorry about it. It's a lot of domestic issues. But what I want to talk about is I want to agree with the other two presenters. You know, we Africans, we I don't know, I think it's about the mindset or the colonialism. You know, we tend to copy the white men, so to speak, a lot. So we don't want to do our own things. We don't want to be original. For instance, if we are teaching, at least we are supposed to teach in our own language. Like the course I gave you, that I mean the draft that I gave you. You saw at the end, I wrote Ndewonu, right? I wrote thank you. I wrote Ndewonu. I wanted to write all of them in different language, like Messi and all the rest of them. So I think we should also look at trying to teach in our own language. We should be proud of our language. We should be proud of our dialects. We should be able to have that pride to speak our language, even when we find ourselves in the diaspora or in in the international scene. Like if you're asked a question, there's nothing that stops you from speaking your own language and you have an interpreter. By doing so, our language will go further, and people who have not even heard about it will begin to hear it and pick interest. Like there was a video I saw online, some Chinese school, they were trying to learn how to speak Igbo. There was a teacher, an Igbo woman, who was teaching the Chinese children how to speak Igbo. And she was mentioning some things and interpreting them in Igbo language, and they were trying to learn it. So if children who are in China can have the zeal to learn Igbo language, then what stops us from trying to be ourselves and doing that thing which should be what we should do to represent, to show ourselves that we are truly what we are and where we come from, Africans. So I think that mentality, that mindset has to change. So I'm agreeing with the two presenters. Like in the place of language, we should really improve on speaking our own language.
That is a wonderful contribution. And in fact, let me add that it's not just important for us to teach in our indigenous languages, to speak it and be proud of them. It's also a necessity that we engage in our language and we study the languages, because our languages contain codes. Some of them are hidden codes, some of them are just something we can take a look and we have an aha moment. I've talked about, for example, the translation of Ezinolo. In the Igbo language, we say Ezinolo, but we never take some time to think about the literal translation of Ezinolo, right? If you study Ezinolo, it literally translates to, well, Ezinolo is the word we use as family, but it literally translates to what? Ezi na olo. Ezi is outside, na, and olo is house. So it literally translates to outside and inside, or compound or yard or village and house, outside and inside. In other words, just by looking at our language, looking at that word Ezinolo, it's clear that we aren't supposed to be looking at family from the nuclear point of view. Africans have always looked at family from an extended point of view. That is at the core of who we are. So I really agree with you on that. And I'd like to also go ahead and make this appeal to you, since you are thinking about it. After you've developed your course in English, because we're going to teach it in English, let's offer another section of your course in Igbo. I sent an email out, I think a couple of weeks ago, about this same issue. I was asking some of our brothers and sisters, our instructors who speak other African languages, to think about creating sections of their courses in their own indigenous language, in Yoruba, in Hausa, in Urhobo, whatever you speak. Because for me, it's also about what? Access. When we say that we are an African university, we must make sure that our courses are in English, because a lot of Africans speak English, in French, in Portuguese, but also in our native languages, in our indigenous languages, so that the woman in the village who doesn't speak English can also learn. so that the boy who doesn't speak French can also learn. This is very important. We are not just here to be another university. You have to take any sense of traditional university out, keep it outside the door, and come in with a sense of newness and innovativeness and creativity, because that is how we're going to move forward. We need to teach to the very ends and the very corners of Africa and beyond, because there are Africans all over the world. We have to reach them too. So that is why we are the first and only African university in modern times. We are not here to joke. So thank you so much. I'm so happy it's coming from you. We need to do that. And we shouldn't wait to do that. We need to do that immediately. So once you're done, let's think about translating into our native languages. Let me call on Brother Franklin. You have the floor.
Hey, good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes, loud and clear. Thank you.
Yeah, so I think that was a great lesson, you know, everything you said at the beginning. And I think everyone has made a very, very strong contributions. So in terms of what we need to do going forward, I think that when I look at the world, we're slowly becoming a global village. So actually, that's what they say. So I think that there's a lot of things that the Western culture is doing right that we can learn from, because a lot of us are here, right, because of a reason. So I don't want to go to the extreme of saying, you know, we're taking the Western culture and that's necessarily a bad thing, because there's a lot of things we can learn from them. However, I think that things that should be taught in Africa and in schools should be focused on values. And when you were talking, I was taking notes of some that came to mind based on my personal experience. I have 4 here. I'm just going to list them. One is self-efficacy, which is what has been talked about, the change of mindset, the belief that you are competent. We have self-efficiency. We have been taught in school how to work hard and we know what to do. But there needs to be that belief that I am competent and I'm even just as competent, even not, if not more, than anybody else, irrespective of color of skin. The other thing is integrity. It's so difficult for us as Africans, sometimes I feel, to have that integrity. You know, even sometimes people, it's hard to, which leads me to the third point, which is trust. So my third point is trust, and they're kind of connected. I think sometimes it feels like in Africa, people don't teach integrity. Even in churches, they don't teach it. Sometimes it's like, oh, as long as he pays his tithe, we don't care what he's doing, right? We don't care what he's doing. I remember the other day, I forgot to actually shut my door here. My door was open. And I went to bed and woke up the next day and nothing happened, you know, because I wasn't too concerned that, oh, something was going to happen, because I know that I trust the folks that I live around. I trust my, you know, neighbors. So the integrity and the trust is something that is not taught. And the last point is the greater good mindset. Greater good mindset. I think a lot of times you see someone who builds a house in one corner and he ties the road from the junction of that place to his house. We need to start thinking about things from the greater good. And that's one thing that we've learned from the Western culture. A lot of people think about things from the greater good. You heard is it Kennedy who says, don't think about what your country will do for you, think about what you do for your country. What does that mean? He's telling you, don't think about what your country will do for you, because that's a given. We're going to do that anyways. You think about what you would do for your country. So I think if we can have the self-efficacy as Africans and have integrity and trust, if we can teach that and also teach the greater good mindset, I think those are values that we already have. I think when someone was saying that many, many years ago, that's what my parents taught me. That's what their parents taught them. But I think we're losing that as we start going into people thinking about money and riches and all this different. So if we can have this, I think that it's a big deal that I think will help us as an African, you know, continent.
Okay,
Thanks.
thank you so much, Brother Franklin. I'm going to call Brother Bantiyun and then Sister Margaret. Brother Bantiyun, I remember last. Yeah, go ahead. You have the floor.
Hi.
Hi.
I wrote a book entitled Engineered Sustainable Development, and can you see it?
Yes.
Okay. it is a new approach for invoking sustainable development in developing countries like Africa. It starts with the underlying issues. Okay, we are talking about education. Education is and will be continuing the way it is because we are not tackling the root cause. The root cause being the moms and dads, where early childhood education is catered at the infancy stage. If mom and dad are made aware that they can be able to create a new environment, and collectively the people can create their own home, their own future, where there will be running water, electricity, and for that matter, high productivity, which allows them to earn a better living. Unless that is ingrained in the minds of their parents, so that they can, be hastened to learn and may be aware and that it is in their control. Things, we can only do so much on the branches. We have to do right from the roots and the roots of and the tree. So in order to do that, we have to do a number of things. So I created this book. It is entitled Engineered Sustainable Development, 4 EPR approach for expediting sustainable development and peace all over the country. 4 EPR stands for economically, educationally, environmentally engineered productivity revitalization. How can we boost the productivity of every person so that they can be in charge of their own destiny? Okay? Many people in the rural areas are not even aware that there is running water, there is electricity, and there is, a better life of living that we all take for granted. How can people aspire, dream, and plan and work to earn that living for themselves and for their children? So we have to start there. And we have to really change the mindset and unlock the creativity and the natural talent of every person, from parents, grandparents, into the children. Okay, touching and working on the youth is a good step forward. On the children is a good step forward, but we have to continue in all directions. Last point, subsistence economic life has to be dismantled or gradually reassembled to have that connectivity, trade and exchange within the communities. Why should we be looking to Europe, America, when there is a huge number of consumers and suppliers that can evolve from within the continent? Those are the ideas. You can take in with me how to get the book, and I can be able to help going forward. Thank you.
Thank you so much, brother. I think somebody wants you to post the title of your book in the chat room. Would you please do that for us? In the meantime, I'm going to call on Sister Margaret. You have the floor.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. I think most people have said what I intended to say. I'll just add a few things here. So someone talked about history. I think Mazi Prosper spoke about his history. I agree with you, my brother. It's good if you don't know where you're coming from. I think you'll have problem knowing where you're going to. Another thing they say, we must know our history so that we don't repeat the mistakes of the past. And also that part is very important. When I came here, I realized that there were certain things in our history that we did not know, that I didn't know. History of the Blacks, history of African Americans, history of Africa and our civilization and all that. So I believe that is very, very important. I like to say that we have resources in Africa. Most of the brain drain that is happening in Africa is Africa contributing to the rest of the world. We can have Africans coming back. I would like to see a situation where Osiri University will have this crop of Africans coming back to give back to Africa through this university in the best way possible, in any way possible. We have in science, we have in technology, we have in education, we have everywhere. We can have this same crop of Africans through Osiri University come back home and give back. Whatever thing they have, whatever resources they have, we can use this channel. So we have the resources. Another thing I want to talk about is in our courses, we can include this thing about biases. This thing, I think someone mentioned it in the chat, and I think that I agree with Hani. How can we teach in a way where we can deal with biases? Because, you know, there was this other meeting we held here, and someone says, Black lives matter, but do Black lives matter to Blacks? That's a bias. And we as Africans, we must deal with that. Because, I mean, a lot of us here are the same color skin, we're Blacks, but we have our own biases, even within us. In Nigeria, in Uganda, in Kenya, within your community, in Rwanda, you still have segregation, we still have division among us. This group of people feel they are better than this set of people, which is what brings me to the other point that one of my brothers here raised, talking about greater good. We must learn to see things on the general picture. We are together, we are one. We should learn to see things for the greater good of others. So if this can be infused in our curriculum for us to teach that, and stop putting that bias, that barrier of bias, and say, nobody's better than anybody. We are all one, and we should all share a common goal and a common vision towards that. Another I want to add is these tech skills that is going now. We're all, you know, being part of in the world. If there's a way we can teach technology skills, tech skills, so kind of domicile it in Africa, using what we have in Africa to teach our own people. I mean, we have wonderful people, young Africans developing things, using what we have, using the resources around their environment. We have children who haven't even really gone into Harvard. They have not gone to the best universities in the world, and they are building things that could compete anywhere in the world. So we can learn to bring back these technology skills and use what we have in our environment to teach that in the school also. And lastly, I want to mention the aspect of values. You know, that part of value that we must hammer on corruption. I mean, come on, guys. We know that corruption is something that is always associated with Africa. But when we want to bring it in the educational sector, we must look at the value where to clear out this get rich quick mentality and make the value of hard work, productivity, very, very key. So people will know. I think we can also throw more light on the consequences of corruption and consequences of this get rich quick and where it cannot take you to, and exalt and maybe kind of throw more light and put more advantages to the advantage of why when you work hard and when you are consistent in what you are doing, when you build the value in yourself, what it does for you in the future. Because I mean, you can get rich quick today and it doesn't end anyway. You just down the line, you get into jail or you get killed or something like that. So I think if all these things are infused inside of into our curriculum, it's going to help a lot. Thank you very much.
That is wonderful. I hope the instructors who are on this platform right now are listening. So you have the academic freedom to start incorporating biographies, historical events into your courses, stories, case studies into your courses to tease out some of these values. You can have a discussion about a value just by engaging in a proverb. So think about creative ways to start doing this. Now, it's important that we also understand that if you want to change something, it's not enough to just say, do not do something, do not be corrupt, right? Do not lie. It's important that we show people the way to go. So I like what you said, Sister Margaret, that we need to be showing people what to do, right? Show them what happens when you are a person of integrity, right? Show them what happens when you are hardworking, so that people can actually see something to emulate. So it's not enough to just say, you are corrupt, you are bad, stop doing that. Stop doing that. But what should they be doing? So show them a better way to live. And I think we're going to see the change happening. Now, remember, there was a time I had asked you all to take some time to sacrifice, make a sacrifice for somebody. That's another way change comes about. We learn by doing. When you do something, it becomes part of you, right? So if you will go out today and you've identified someone who's in need, and you have something that you also need, and you can share with that person, you have learned, you just taught your brain to share, to be happy. You just ask yourself and giving yourself the permission to live out the ideals of Ubuntu. So giving assignment to students where they can go out to the community or go back to their families and do something that is positive is also a fantastic way of experiencing what you're trying to let them learn. So let's keep that in mind. And so I'm going to call on, I think, brother Jonathan, you want to have the last word? We have about 2 minutes left. You want to have the last word? I believe you have something else to add.
Thank you. I think that, what has been discussed has been profound, and it really speaks to the deep-rooted systemic oppression that our people have been victim of. What someone mentioned earlier, colonization. And, and as we think about these issues and the plight and the condition of Black people, we have been abused, we have been exploited, we have been oppressed in all kinds of ways. And certainly the continent of Africa has been the victim of global exploitation, like none before and like no other. And as we talk about mindset shift, I think that the 4 points that one of our other brothers, I think it was Franklin, mentioned about self-efficacy and about integrity and trust. These things are key to us truly, and the greater good mindset as well, which is language that I use all the time because it's so important that we not get trapped in individualistic mindsets, but that we embrace individuality. That is your individual personality, your individual journeying in life. You embrace all that comes with that, but with an understanding that we are interconnected, interrelated, and interdependent, and that we need each other. There has never been a person on this earth who's ever existed, ever, without being connected or somehow here by way of somebody else. We need each other. And now more than ever, we have an obligation to not only shout Black Lives Matter, to get white folk and oppressive folk to hear it and believe it. We must believe it too. We must believe it too. We must believe we matter, and we must begin to use our intellect, our innovation to connect us and create new systems that unite us, that empower us to be the best that we could possibly be. And so I do look forward to continuing this conversation and this great work. And certainly I mentioned earlier this one thing, and it is the need for us, as someone mentioned, history is so crucial. Many of us do not know our history. Most of us don't know our history. And the reason why our communities are the way that they are is because we are just walking through life in many ways ignorant to the sufferings that have come before us. And if we learn from them, we can come up with new ideas for how we can prosper. And our young people need us. Our young people need us to create opportunity for them that can give them access to resources and experiences that would expose them and will ignite their imagination. Our young people are not imagining what they can be and going after it, because many of them are restricted to small cities and towns, and that they never get to travel outside of. So they don't know the world. They haven't seen the Chinese people learning their language. And these things are so crucial, even when we think about not only those that can't travel, so mobility is an issue, but those who don't even have access to internet to be able to connect to the world through technology. All of these things are crippling our communities.